This episode is brought to you by Endless Comics, Games, and Cards. Whether you are a dedicated Wednesday warrior or looking for the latest drop of TCG or sports cards, Endless Comics, Games, and Cards has you covered. While Endless is known for their large collection of both single-issue comics and library of graphic novels, not to mention their monthly comic book club, they also stay fully stocked with singles and sealed product for Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and many others. What's the best part? You can set up a pull list online at endlesscgc.com and they'll send your books to you. So head on over to endlesscgc.com or check them out on social media at endlesscgc.
Hey everybody, this is David Harper from the comics interview podcast Off Panel and the comic site Sketched, and you are listening to the Oblivion Bar podcast.
Welcome to the Oblivion Bar podcast with your host, Chris Hacker and Aaron Knowles.
Joining me today is the owner and operator of the Eisner-nominated subscription-based comic book site Sketched, which is the research-driven forum that aims not just to look deeper into the comics that we love, but also the creators that make them. He is also the host of Off Panel, the weekly interview podcast that, as superstar comic book creator Declan Shalvey puts it, an oasis of great discussion on comics and the craft of making them. Every new show is the highlight of my week, as I know I'll learn something new with every episode. It is my pleasure to welcome my friend David Harper back onto the Oblivion Bar podcast.
I'm here. Hello.
Here I am.
Also, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for using one of my pull quotes from creators, which I'm very proud of, and I have not updated in 6 years, but I'm still like Stuart Immonen, Fiona Staples, Jen Bartel, Declan Shalvey. Can't ask for much better.
Yeah, no kidding. Let me ask you really off-the-wall random questions to start us off here, Dave, because we have a lot to get to here in this episode. First of all, so great to have you here back on the Oblivion Bar. Last time you were on was in 2021, so great to have you back. But secondly, where is Jen Bartel? Where in the world is Jen Bartel? Where's that at? Where's that article?
I don't have my Jen Bartel GPS tracker on me right now, but I think she's doing lots of stuff that we just don't know about. I'm trying to think of the last covers that she was doing. She was doing those covers consistently for She-Hulk, the Rainbow Rolls run. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I think she kind of popped up on when it came to comic book conversation was that her art was being used without pay for Marvel Rivals, I think it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we haven't seen her since. And I think it probably has more to do with the things that she's doing and less to do with anything that came up with that. Jen's like designing shoes. Jen's doing really cool stuff. I think if Jen's not in the public focus, it's because she's doing something amazing we just don't know about yet.
It just kind of bums me out, and I haven't seen anything recently, not just in comics, but in general. And obviously, she, like you said, she's sort of off the socials, which I totally get and understand. I'm definitely not chastising her for that at all. But like, gosh, I just want more Jen Bartel. And if she pops her head out and presents something, I'm going to be the first one in line to get it. Like I said, I know she's been on your show and she's been on my short list for a long time here on the Oblivion Bar at some point, which is, here's a fun side story. Just a quick segue off the top here in this recording is that when we first started the Oblivion Bar in April of 2020, one of the very first people that I reached out to get on the show was Jen Bartel. And to her credit, she immediately was like, she replied within like a couple days and was like, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. When's it good for you? And this must have been right around the time of New York Comic Con, because I saw her at New York Comic Con. And either I completely freaked her out at the show when I met her, or she got really busy from there on because I hadn't heard anything from her since.
I'm going to guess the latter, but that could not November 2020 though. Like, because
yeah, it was somewhere in that time frame. I'm pretty sure.
I was going to say, because I don't think New York Comic Con happened in 2020.
Maybe it was. This is interesting. Now I'm getting, time is a construct, all of this is, those 3 or 4 years between 2019 and 2023 are really,
it's a chunk. It's a chunk. It's not a single year. It's just like a epoch, or it's just like this long period of time that is a solid beam of just whatever.
I don't know when exactly I saw her afterwards, but I definitely did. And she was really great and warm. And so, just like the best, right? But then I haven't heard from her since. And neither has most of the comic world. But Jen, if you're listening for whatever reason to this episode, please come back and share some of the stuff you've been working on. I'd love to see it. I'm sure David would too.
She's great. Yeah. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Jen, if you're listening. But David, let's get to you here because, it's been a couple months now, and I think it's important that we discuss something, I think, maybe one of the most important hot topics we have here on this episode. We have to discuss what happened on June 22nd. Have you healed enough from June 22nd to our beloved Indiana Pacers and that game 7 of the NBA Finals?
I thought you were going to talk about one of the many imperiled things that happened to me so far this year. Have I healed from the Pacers losing? I've healed from the Pacers losing. I don't know if I've healed from Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles and Miles Turner leaving to become a Milwaukee Buck,
which I called.
There's no way you
not
called
the
him.
Milwaukee part.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, as we've discussed over text message before, I am very much on the high end of Pacers fans of Miles Turner love. He was my favorite Pacer, and he was my number 2 behind Reggie Miller. So losing him, huge bummer for me. Tyrese being out. I feel great. I mean, honestly, I love weird, like there was this game last year where the Pacers played the Minnesota Timberwolves and everyone was out. Tyrese was out. Pascal Siakam sat out for like the first game of the entire season. Miles Turner was out. It was all like the second team guys. And then like midway through the game, Andrew Nembhard was the only starter who was playing. He got ejected for like kind of half punching Rudy Gobert. And so it was just second and third string guys, and they won. And it was so fun to watch. And so there's a really like hardcore fan, NBA Indiana Pacers sicko fan of myself side that is like all about watching this weirdo team that we're about to see in this upcoming season. So I'm going to say I've recovered, and I'm now cautiously optimistic to the point where I made a statement on my episode with Kyle Starks recently of off panel that they were going to make the playoffs. Will I be right? I don't know, but who cares? It'll be fun to find out.
What's the division looking like this year? I mean, Milwaukee's going to be okay, right?
They're going to be okay. I mean, the problem is not the problem. The delight is that the East is terrible.
Right.
And so there's a very reasonable chance that the Pacers will be a mediocre team filled with teams that aspire to mediocrity. So we'll see what that lands on. But the Pacers, it's going to be a weird season. It's going to be a gap year, but I have faith that they will come through this stronger. And I just hope that they like put Pascal Siakam and TJ McConnell in like a cryogenic chamber, like Demolition Man style for the entire season. So next year they'll come back and they'll still be the same age.
Right. Yeah. I know no one besides maybe 2 or 3 people, but specifically David and I really care about this Pacers talk. But I have one more question for you.
Let's do it.
The Pacers. Because I don't know if folks listen to this know, I'm in Indianapolis and Pacers Nation was on fire that month or so of the month and a half of playoffs. And, no one ever wavered until that moment in Game 7 with Tyrese. And I'm just curious to go to that exact moment, because I have this perverse sort of, I guess, interest in where you were at, what you were thinking in that moment. Because we talked a lot leading up to the Game 7, final game, but then like you and I sort of, without saying anything, accepted that we're not going to talk about the Pacers for a bit until right now. So let me ask you, that evening, where were you at? How did you react? How did you cope? All those things
During the game,
and I guess maybe directly afterwards.
I don't talk to people during the games, not because I'm a psycho, but because it's just better self-preservation. I watch the games by myself. So I was downstairs on my couch. As soon as he tore his Achilles, I knew. I mean, like the Pacers had 2 players that tore their Achilles earlier in the year, the first like 5 games of the season. And you just know it. I've watched enough basketball. You just see it and you know. So
actually, if you see any athlete that their leg sort of buckles like that, something bad has happened.
It's not just that. It's just like the movement plus him going down, and it's like instantaneously. Plus, like that was the most high risk thing with him having a calf strain. So I went upstairs and I told my wife very depressingly that Tyrese Halliburton just tore his Achilles, and that sucks. But Pacers still have a chance. And so I was still optimistic going into halftime because they were up by 1.
They played well going into halftime.
Yeah, and then like TJ McConnell tried to turn into like, I don't know, basketball Jesus on the court and like try to carry them through the third quarter. But the problem is they just stopped having a functional offense. And honestly, I think some of the guys were just shell shocked because of what happened. Sure. I was shell shocked, and I was on my couch in Alaska. They were watching it happen live with somebody they know very closely. And so I don't blame them.
I was in a bar in Indianapolis, and to properly explain what happened in that bar, it was full of energy. You could have cut the energy with a butter knife. It was thick. Like everyone was feeling it. It was amazing. Honestly, it was really cool to see everyone show out for that game. But as soon as you see Tyrese going down, before they even announced that he had tore anything, you could just feel the air evaporate. Like it was wild. And then like, as you said, like going into halftime, the team was still playing pretty well. And I don't think Oklahoma knew how to play the Pacers without Tyrese, right? Like they were having a tough time figuring out how to properly play this team. And then I think at halftime they made some adjustments. And I think talent at the end of the day sort of figures it out, right? So
they were a better team, to be honest, but at the same time, okay, they were a more talented team. I don't know if they were a better team overall. I will say one of the things that I carry with me is the fact that like I listened to a podcast the next day. I think it was either a Zach Lowe show or Bill Simmons podcast with Zach Lowe on it. Zach Lowe is my guy. I will listen to anything he does. He's an NBA journalist and podcaster. And they talked about how, like, for maybe the first time in NBA history, the team that they'll remember from the season was the runner-up, not the champion.
Yeah.
And that stuff is great. Like, I'm a firm believer in the journey is as important as the end result. And the Pacers were a wonderful journey. Did it end in a dark place? Yes, but that's okay. Sometimes that happens. And I'm so thankful for the journey.
Mm-hmm. I often equate the same thing to like award wins, specifically talking about here on the show with like Eisner noms. Like I'm a firm believer that the Eisner nom is as important as the win most of the time, because it's a recognition from a body of folks that love the medium as much as you, me, and everybody else, that you're doing something really special. So like, even if you don't win, Tom King, if you're listening to this right now, he is like one of the like sorest losers when it comes to the Eisners. If you've ever been around him after an Eisner loss, he needs to hear this every single time, is that like the nom is so important, like that means so much. So I totally agree with you there. It is totally about the journey.
I took a loser's picture with him after we lost in 2024. It's funny. I like you saying that because I've been nominated twice and lost both times. And so I agree. Win or nomination equally important as the win. Equally.
What's funny is that I actually didn't know that you were nominated twice until preparing for our conversation today, which I'm not really treating this, and I don't mean to like admit this to you in like a negative way, but like I'm not necessarily treating this as like a creator interview necessarily. This is I think more of a conversation with a friend who I also admire and, peer and all those things. But like doing research for this conversation, something I noticed was that, you were nominated with Multiversity. Thank you. I was going to say it wrong, but Multiversity. Yeah, you were nominated then as well. And then of course with Sketched a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's incredible. And I do want to kind of like tie this into my next question here. I guess my first actual question here in our conversation. We've obviously talked a lot, as we've mentioned, since first meeting back in 2021 when you were on the show. We've even met a couple times at these cons over the years, but for episode 47 of the Oblivion Bar podcast, episode 47, we just
what are you on, like 800 now or something?
Right, feels like it. I think it's like episode 203 or something. Legacy,
not
numbers.
Including the grid.
Right, that's right. Yeah, grid is like 240. I don't even know what it's like. 500 close to that, if not. But point being is that I re-listened to that episode with us from back in 2021. And actually, for everyone listening right now, don't listen to any Oblivion Bar episode that's like a year or older. I was mortified the entire time. But I will say that like the thing that they don't often tell you about podcasting is that like when you have folks on that you admire, it's really hard to not just butter them up the entire time and talk about how much you admire them. So, speaking on how you handle that tension between being, both a critic and a fan, when you sit down to prepare for conversations with the creators on Off Panel, what are some tangible preparation, we'll call them pillars, that you sort of structure your questions and the conversation around?
That is a very good question. I saw somebody once point out that when somebody says that's a very good question, it's not actually them complimenting it. It's really them wasting time. Yeah. And I just like with the Eisner nomination thing, I choose to believe that everyone really thinks that I have a good question when they say that. I think that my main pillars are, it's not that I'm not going to compliment people, but I definitely don't go out of my way to just like, me complimenting them. Honestly, I find that, I know this is not the point of your question, but I'll get to the point here in a second. I feel like complimenting people on your show or during an interview and stuff, they can't really do anything with that, right? Because if you compliment them, all they're gonna be like, "Thank you," and then like, "I'm glad
you're right,
that you liked
awesome.
it." Yeah, exactly. There's not a lot for them to build off there. So the pillars I have are, I try to I mean, I think part of this, it's hard for me to reconcile two different sides, the intent side and then the conversational side, because I go in with an extended plan of what I'm going to talk about. And then I pretty much instantaneously throw it away as soon as I start doing it, because I just start doing my own thing. And it's funny because now that I have video stuff up on YouTube for Sketched or for Off Panel, and you can see me doing it, you can see like how much I'm just making shit up on the fly, which is really funny. But my main pillars are, I want to ask people questions that they don't normally get. I want to aim for things that are less about the book and more about the person. And I want to, if there's an opportunity to build on something that's in specific, I try to never leave that behind, because I find that one of the things that, you know, if you've done this for long enough, and I'm sure you do this too, is like when you listen to an interview of any variety, or if you read an interview of any variety, you can see the points where you could have taken a different turn. There's you ever see that Gwyneth Paltrow movie, Sliding Doors?
I have not, no.
Absolute delight. Highly recommended. It is a romantic comedy about a situation where a woman is heading home, and the doors on the metro, or the I forgot whatever, the London train, the tube, close, and she makes it in beforehand. And then it shows a parallel life where she doesn't make it in, and how her life changes upon that. And so I find that like the sliding doors moment is constantly there for, do you take this route or do you not take this route? My choice is to always take that route, unless it's like we're way down a path about talking about like how you used to eat Oreos when you were a kid or something like that. So it's really about just like trying to follow the conversation naturally and try not to be too prescriptive about how I approach stuff, because if I just try to plan the whole thing out, it's going to result in, I don't know, something that feels too structured. Like, here's a good example. You're a football fan. I know that because we're going to do something later that involves the sport. Are you familiar with how Sean McVay plans out his offense for the Los Angeles Rams?
Doesn't he plan out the first drive of every game?
I think it's first 15 plays.
Okay, yeah.
So he plans out the first 15 plays, and then the rest is just like, let's just react.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that. Plan out those plays, you know what you're going in with, and then from there, just see what happens.
Yeah. So let me ask you this to sort of build off that, because I agree with you. That's something you definitely have to learn. For anyone that's listening to this that is either podcasting currently or wants to podcast or just sort of is interested in the interview process, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in any of this, but something I've learned over the last 5 years of the Oblivion Bar is that you at some point have to trust yourself enough to go in with a transcript, because again, I'm pretty extensive with my transcripts when it comes to the interviews, but you have to trust yourself enough to lay out a foundation of questions and then be okay not asking all those questions, because again, as you said, you have to be able to follow people down a path if it's interesting. And I had to learn that because, again, as you said, it gets pretty wooden if you just ask the questions. It's something that, I'm sort of perversely interested in when it comes to listening to other people's podcasts, Off Panel included, is figuring out how they get back, or at least recognizing when they are trying to get back on track. I love, and I can always tell when you do this, because you'll quickly respond to something a creator has said, and you go, but I want to get back to, and then you want to get back to your question, which is an obvious sort of transition. I do a similar thing, but in a less smooth way. I will try to tie, I've done this a couple times and I hate that I do this. I will try to tie in their response to my next question, even if it has nothing to do with the response that they had given. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I think that one of the things that people have problems with when it comes to interviews and honestly engaging with comic creators when it comes to the, this side of things, is that there's two things. One, you put creators on a pedestal and you act like they're not just people and they're just people. And then the other thing I think is that I don't think people trust themselves enough, because the thing that makes us good at this in theory is that we're passionate and knowledgeable. And like, honestly, I look at my planning document less as a script and more as a scouting report, if that makes sense. It's more about like knowing what the opponent, in this case, my guest, they're my opponent, what my opponent typically responds to, what they don't respond to, and then how to act accordingly. And then it's just, I should have asked this before. You don't mind if I curse, right? Please, yeah. It's just a bullshit factory from there. It's just like, here's a good example. Like, I just had Jesse Lonergan on the podcast. It'll have gone up by the time this goes up, I believe. And like, I have this one section where I knew I was going to ask him about this, where I brought up the idea that Drome, his new graphic novel, is propaganda for simple machines, which he thought was hilarious. And so I knew he would think it was hilarious. But then like there was another section that was entirely based on something that we talked about before we even started recording that I hadn't even planned on talking about, where we were talking about Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes.
Mhm.
So I brought that back in, and it's just like, know your stuff enough so when you actually get to the moment where you can choose go or no go, that you feel good enough to just go. Trust yourself. Like, trusting yourself is, I think, something that you only gain with repetition, but I think more people would benefit from.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. It is so much about staying water, right? Being flexible in a conversation and be able to trust, again, your knowledge and also like your ability to just have a normal conversation. Because a lot of times, as you said, these creators, and this is a big lesson I had to learn. Shout out to Philip Kennedy Johnson, our first guest ever, who I just like gave way too many compliments to. You have to like understand that these are just talented nerds and they just want to have a conversation about their work, or sometimes not even that. How many times I've been in a conversation with a creator and they like so don't want to talk about the thing that they're there on the show to talk about, which is funny to me every single time. But it's just sort of recognizing those things. And again, as you said, trusting yourself enough to be flexible in that conversation. And you do an incredible job of that. That's, I think, part of the reason why I've always admired both your work on, within Sketch, but also specifically on Off Panel. And part of the reason why, and I'll mention this a couple times, and this is we're talking about not buttering up your guest. Here's a quick butter up of David Harper, is that like the Oblivion Bar would not happen without Off Panel. It wouldn't. I mean, it's not just Off Panel. Like, you are definitely one of many inspirations for the show, but like, your ability to have a very casual, comfortable conversation that is both insightful and entertaining is something that we have always strived for on the show, but in a very different way,
Sure.
like at least hopefully in a different way. So, that's all you can ask for. So I guess that's a compliment / here's a question attached to it. I guess in the most significant way, how do you feel like your interview style has changed since the beginning of Off Panel compared to, August 2025?
I think that there's two main things. One is a content thing, and the other one is style. Content, when I first started, one of my big focuses on Sketch and Off Panel was business. And so I talked a lot about business stuff with people. And I still do, but that is less of the focus these days. I think that a lot of it has shifted more towards just talking to them like people, because I think that I've stopped trying to be something that I thought was a good fit for me and just am what I am, to quote Popeye. Exactly. And then the other thing is, I think that I've just grown more comfortable being myself and grown more comfortable just taking those paths that I talked about. I think that I've been there for a long time, but it's just, I went from being like 20% of the time in the beginning, I would take those paths to like now somehow 109% of the time I take those paths. Like, I'm taking those paths before I even ask my real questions.
Yep.
And so I think that that's the biggest ways that I've evolved is towards naturalism and away from business, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, absolutely. It totally does. Now, I want to shift to something that I guess is maybe a little more serious, but I guess I do want to approach it with some levity and maybe some insight, because I don't want to tread in the territory of, I definitely don't want to make you uncomfortable with this question, David.
You're not going to make me uncomfortable.
Okay.
I mean, you already brought up the fact that the Pacers lost. And like, if you brought up the fact I had a heart attack or lost my job, it is going to be less important to me than that. So,
well, let's get on to the job loss then.
Yeah,
So 2025, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, has not been an ideal for anyone. I think, anyone who is like somewhat normal or has like decent morals, 2025 has been a wild year. But I think like you have had a very specifically challenging year, 2025.
Yes. It's been less than ideal, suboptimal.
Right. And I'm obviously referring to on July 17th, you announced on a post on Instagram that you were laid off from your job after 13 years, which was crazy to see. I'm just curious if, and again, please share as much as you're comfortable with, but can you walk us through, how you were first reacted to that moment? And then also, how did you ultimately decide that, going to Off Panel and Sketch, going to that full time was going to be your job going forward?
So the funny thing about this is, like, it seems like it's something that would be really traumatic because, and I do think it's worth mentioning, back in May, I also had like a cardiac event, which turned out to be a heart attack and pericarditis and like 2 months of like horrible appointments and stuff like that. And that was like, if it weren't for the fact that those things were happening and I was still having to go to doctors and I was losing my insurance, I wouldn't have been really that worried about it. But the funny thing is I knew it was coming. I knew I was getting laid off just because I could read. I'm very good at reading situations. Maybe that's why I'm a good interviewer. I don't know. But I tend to have a pretty good idea of what's coming before it comes. I knew it and I was worried sick. Like literally, like I felt horrible to that point. And the next morning I went in and I had the meeting that happened where I was laid off. And this is going to sound like, I don't know, self-propaganda or something like that. But afterwards I called my mom. She was like, I was just talking to her and she's like, so you didn't get laid off? And I was like, no, I did. And I was like, why do you think I didn't get laid off? And she's like, you sound so happy. And I was in that moment, it was like an instant catharsis. I felt great. And in that moment, I instantly knew that I wanted to try to do something that I never would have tried otherwise, which is, what would happen if I just tried to do sketch and off panel as my main job and tried to like build supplementary things around it? Like, when is this? This is going up to 22nd.
Yeah, we're gonna put this out the same week that we're having this. So everyone at home, we're recording this on Tuesday, August 19th. I'll be putting it out that Friday, which I want to say is the 22nd. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I can't say some of the things that are come up, but I have other writing things that I have coming. I'm doing paid work for my local comic shop where I'll be doing a email newsletter recommending comics for them every single week. And so I've tried taking my skill set and saying, can I do this for other things, other platforms, other sites, and try to supplement the work that I do and try to turn it into a real job. And at the same time, trying to make some cuts to see if I could make it a little financially responsible. But the thing is like, sometimes like you could spend your entire life grinding through something you don't love because you think you should and because it seems like the responsible thing to do when you really in your heart of hearts want to do something else. Is that hosting a comic book podcast? Is that embracing the glory of dance? Is that, I don't know, becoming a playwright, stuntman? Yeah, exactly. Is there some sort of thing that speaks to you but you wouldn't try because you're too fearful of making that choice? I'll tell you what, a really good way for that to be solved for you is when somebody else makes that choice for you. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I felt awesome. Was that 100% a great feeling for the rest of that week? No. There were moments where I felt really bad about it. And I was just very like self-conscious about what it meant about me and where I kind of fit in the world and whether or not I was making a psychotic decision trying to focus on writing about comics and podcasting about comics for a living. But I felt really good about the idea of me doing it. And then the thing that made me feel even better is the fact that people responded so strongly. Like I had more support than I could ever even possibly state. And like a number of the amount of which would be irresponsible for me to even say publicly. But I will say that in the 2 weeks afterwards, Sketch grew more in terms of subscribers than it had an entire years previous. And sometimes many more times. It's actually really crazy. And like, is it still well under what I was earning at my day job? I was the VP of digital at an advertising agency. Yeah, but I am eating at home more often and I'm making coffee for myself more often. And that is not a bad thing. I canceled my gym membership and I run outside now. These are not bad things. These are just, things that I had to change. And I feel really great about it. If you ask me again in 6 months, I might change. But right now I feel awesome.
Well, kudos to you for staying so optimistic. Because I know that if I had lost my day job, and because I agree with you, like I don't think we could do the Oblivion Bar full time in its current form. But like I feel like I would have the flexibility to maybe figure it out. But to be as optimistic as you currently are or were in that moment, my gosh, I mean, I feel like that's such a testament to, I think, not only you as a person, but also your faith in what you're doing, both with off panel and Sketched. And I'm just curious, from a workload standpoint, you already mentioned sort of like the amount of folks who came to your aid immediately and gave you good words of, not only wisdom, but encouragement. And, you even said it like financial sort of support as well. In terms of workload, do you feel any more pressure to put out more things for both Sketched and off panel?
No. I mean, the thing is I don't mean this in a bad way, but I don't really change because of external pressures. And so I still have my my formula, if you will, where it's like I publish something Monday through Friday on Sketched, where the first thing is off panel on Monday. And then I have 2 regular columns, the poll and Comics Disassembled, which I do on Tuesday and Friday. And then Wednesday and Thursday are kind of feature pieces. I've already had people tell me I write way too much for them to even keep up with because I write really long articles. And so I think it's less about the quantity and it's more about having more time to make bigger plans to make sure that everything is great. And it's allowing me to really focus on making sure that the stuff that I'm delivering, it's not that I've ever published anything that I'm not proud of, but what if I was even prouder of it? Like, could it be 20% better? Like tomorrow, which is 2 days previous of when this goes up, I have a feature going up that is about Jeff Smith's Bone and when it published in Disney Adventures magazine in the 1990s. And it is a retrospective about it and the story of how it came together and all the players that are involved. And it's an amazingly star-studded lineup. It's like Jeff Smith, obviously, I talked to him for it. The person who brought it into the magazine was Marv Wolfman, the writer and editor from Marvel and DC history, who was at the time the comics editor for Disney Adventures. His assistant or associate comics editor at the time was Heidi McDonald from The Beat. And then when she took over from Marv and eventually brought it back in 1997, her assistant was Cliff Chang, the artist. And so I talked to all of them. And like, I actually think that Heidi has never experienced like hardcore researcher David. And I think that she's been like, why are you asking me so many goddamn questions about this, David? Like yesterday I was talking to her on the phone about clarifying this one specific detail. And she's like, you're really focused on this. I'm like, I try to get things right. And so I wouldn't have been able to have those I'm trying to get these things right conversations without this new world my new setup. And I just think that it's going to result in better things. And it's going to result in me being able to do things I hadn't been able to do previous, like doing video, at least in part thanks to Riverside and Chris Hacker right here, the person who taught me how to use what is called a new tool. I haven't learned one of those in a while.
We're born of the modern age, everybody.
I know, it's crazy. I didn't realize that there is video, but I guess that's what AV always stood for, right? It's not just audio, it's audio video. And so I've been learning a lot of new things and I've been excited about trying some new directions. And I have a bunch of really big pieces that I have coming up. And I've always kind of found that like I'm very efficient with my time and I'm very good at kind of juggling things. And removing my entire day job has made it so I don't like people are like, can you get this to me like next week? I'm like, I can get it to you like tomorrow if you want. Like
I might have it done in like 4 hours.
I know it's like a lot of this stuff. I'm trying not to sound like braggy, but I mean, a lot of this stuff went from being like, this was already fairly easy for me to being like, this is like psychotically easy. Like this is far too easy. I'm like playing a game with no damage right now. I can't die. So yeah, I mean, I think that's mostly it. It's less about adding to the quantity and instead it's more about adding to the quality.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. Let me flip that last statement you had there on its head a little bit. Is there anything not only with Sketch and sort of I know you said you sort of have a weird view of the term journalist. I know you mentioned that in some of your sketchbooks before, but
I write about comics.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just curious, like, what is challenging to you? Are there certain avenues within both Sketched and Off Panel that you just find endlessly tedious and hard to wrap your head around?
I wouldn't say tedious. My problem is I'm one person, and idea generation is fundamentally a limiting factor. And so it's like I currently have ideas that are building out into like October, but like once I get to October and I don't have anything else built out, what's next? Right. The only person who can answer that is me. And unfortunately, it's like ideas are always going to be a constraint. That's going to be a challenge. And like part of it is like I have friends who do this stuff. And like one of them I'm going to do some calls with where we're going to kind of brainstorm together and do stuff like that. I'm like doing a regular piece with my buddy Oliver Sava, a comic critic who Eisner Award winning. I'll have to ask him if he feels like winning made a big difference. We're doing a regular column and we're going to be doing one of my like typically most listened to podcasts in the Superhero State of the Union really soon. But just talking with him like helps me, and like talking with people like you, getting outside perspectives. This gives me time to like just get on a call with somebody and just be like, what do you think should be happening that's not happening? And I think that will help with idea generation. The other problem I have is something our pals Brad and Lisa Gullickson are exceptional at, which is they're great at marketing stuff. I'm very resistant at it. I am an artiste. I want my work to stand for itself. I told you before we started recording completely seriously that my ideal result is for people to read what I do and then enjoy it privately and never tell me about it. And I'm not kidding when I say that. Like, I want my work to resonate with people and I want it to connect. But like, there have been times where my wife Amber and I are like talking to somebody who's like, "Oh, I like comics. What's your podcast about?" And I will like actively talk them out of listening to my podcast. And it's like
please do not. Don't
you don't want to. I mean, like maybe if there's a guest you enjoy, I guess. But I have had to get over that part of me being a thing because I need to do a better job of promoting what I do, both for myself and for the people that I talk to, because I think I do something worthwhile. And I think that it's worth sharing with people and trying to find the balance between promoting it and not being grossed out by it is like I'm having to move that line, and it's an adjustment, and I'm taking my time to get there, but I think that I've gotten a little bit better about it, but baby steps.
I think that adjustment you're talking about is something that a lot of us struggle with. I know I've talked to both Brad and Lisa about this and other friends in the podcasting world, that a lot of us are normal people that just like talking about comics, and we would love to just put things out into the ether and hope that it's like at least listened to by someone. I know, again, you say you don't really care about that, but like I know for me, because I'm a narcissist, I want people to listen to the Oblivion Bar. At least, you know, I don't want everyone to listen to it, and I don't want it to be like Joe Rogan or Call Her Daddy, but I do want like comic fans to enjoy it and listen to it and all those things. But there is a part of you that sort of has to like build up a certain amount of shamelessness, you know, that comes along with like promoting a thing that, again, as you said, you're proud of and you think people may or may not like. I don't know. Like it is tough. It's definitely one of those things. And I don't really know what the recipe is for that, because there are people in our space, and I'm not trying to badmouth anyone who does like content creation for comics, but like, I can't just like, and I've tried doing this, David, I can't do it, is like look into a phone and talk into a phone in an empty room by myself about a thing I like. I have to bounce words off of another person's face like you right now. I can't just like talk into a phone and put it out there and hope people watch it like, you know, certain other creators. So I haven't reached that point, right? But like, it is one of those things that, yeah, you do have to kind of be your own advocate. You have to like marketing. I'm trying to remember who says this exactly, but I heard a saying not too long ago that like the strength in marketing is like being shameless, right? Like you have to be shameless in your product.
I don't think you have to be shameless, but I think it can help. I mean, here's a good question for you. Who's the most famous comic book creator ever?
That's a good question. Stan Lee?
It's an easy answer. Stan Lee. Answer is Stan Lee. Is it because he's the best?
No.
Because he's really good at talking about it.
Right. What isn't that proof of the strategy though? He was the most shameless, therefore people often think of him as like
I mean,
a figure.
He had a carny approach to it. I mean, he was the face of Marvel even for the decades he didn't work at Marvel.
Right.
And like, that's the
just
thing
going to colleges and like pitching movie studios.
Yeah. I mean, he was running like POW Entertainment or whatever, all these different companies that had nothing to do with Marvel. And if anyone saw him, they would be like, Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. He is literally the face of Marvel Comics. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I do think that there is benefit to that. I think it's a fine line. And like, I do think that there's no one answer, not implying that you think that, but it's trying to find a balance between like what you're doing and like what you're comfortable doing and what will be beneficial to you. Like, I also will not probably be the type of person who's like, I don't know, I'm not going to be creating weird influencer videos about like, I'm not going to get a tiny microphone. I'm sorry. Slander to the tiny microphones.
I have the tiny microphone and I don't use it. That's the thing. Yeah.
The only way I will get a tiny microphone is if I get the smallest microphone known to man, just so I can make the dumbest videos. I'm not going to. Okay. And
Top
I swear
5 favorite Chip Zdarsky comics. Here you go from David Harper.
This is going to be like the ultimate, like owning me things later, because I'm absolutely going to do all these things. But the YouTube face where it's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
It's like the YouTube thumbnail face.
You can't even make me make a thumbnail. Like, I'm not even going to do it. Not let alone unless it accidentally happens where I happen to be going, in the
Right.
picture, it's just not going to happen. And so I think everyone's answer for what the right answer is very dependent on who they are. And like I don't like with interviews, I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer beyond not doing something. And I find that like the something that I do is like make genuine connections and make things that people seem to really like and want to share. And does that work all the time? No, but it's working okay so far. So let's see if I can keep building on it. I mean, here's the thing. I've gotten this far with never promoting my stuff. If I promote like 10% of the time, it'd be a massive upgrade.
We've talked about this. I think I've told you this exactly when you know, and again, I appreciate you coming to me of all people to sort of pick the brain of how to make social media content and such. I'm glad that it's at least resonating with you. But like, you know, it's one of those things where you have been so successful with off panel and sketch both without, like you said, without even really putting much effort into that marketing side of things. And it's interesting, right? Like I can only imagine where the show and the website's going to go now that you have Riverside at your disposal within your tool belt, you know, like.
I mean, maybe it's going to become a disaster. I mean, I'm going to become so focused on making Riverside clips of like Kyle Starks talking about Peyton Pritchard or something that it's not going to actually go anywhere. But I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I think part of the problem for me, just real talk, is that I've been doing this. I started writing about comics in 2009 for Multiversity Comics. I was there for 5 years. Then I left, did Sketch 1.0, continued doing off panel, did some freelance stuff. And I think I've trained is a weird word, but you know what I'm saying. I've created expectations for what my stuff is to the point where it's like trying to be like, hey, by the way, I'm doing video stuff on YouTube now. And them not just being like, why you've been doing it for this long. Why? Like trying to get them to actually pay attention to it is a fascinating ask because it's like no one asked for it. Actually, you know what that is? The funny thing though is I got a lot of response from people who are like, I've been waiting for this for years. Oh. And then a lot of response of people being like, it's weird seeing your voice come out of a body. And I'm like, that's all I got, man.
I hope this isn't like gotcha journalism, but I need an honest answer here because I have a very particular sort of opinion on this. And I'm just curious where you sort of land on the spectrum. And I hope anyone that listens to this response from David and myself, this is not any type of indictment to not go follow the Oblivion Bar and Off Panel over on YouTube. But my opinion on podcasting is that I prefer it audio first.
Yeah.
And I think that like the medium of podcasts, or I don't know if is podcasting a medium?
I think audio is the medium and podcasting is just the tool for doing it. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Like I think it's its best when you're just listening to it via audio only. But I get like some people want to watch their podcast, I guess. But I'm just curious, did you have any resistance to sort of converting all of this?
Did I have resistance towards converting it to video?
Yeah.
I did until I got laid off.
Yeah.
Then I got real motivated, Chris. I mean, the thing is my job was in digital. Here's the thing that I think is the real tool. I don't think that video is the medium still. I think that video is exceptional at promoting the audio in this, because like here's a real truth. My listenership has went up since I started doing video. It also coincided with a raise, I don't know, a growth in terms of my visibility because of the things that happened to me and because a lot of those posts kind of blew up and got shared by a lot of very notable people. And which I'm very thankful for. I cannot thank the comics community enough for how kind they were to me in a very dark spot for myself, or what could have been an even darker spot. But the thing is that it's almost like when you do the clips on Instagram, it's like a trailer for something more. And like audio, it's not to say you couldn't just do it as audio. You could just do like a weird graphic with like
a waveform or something
waveforms going. And like, that's just not as interesting. And like part of it too is like podcasts are a people first like medium or whatever the hell we want to call it. Podcasts are a people first thing. And so putting a face to a name and making that happen builds that connection even further and could make the discoverability even higher. And I knew that the entire time. I just didn't want to do it because I didn't want to learn something new. It seemed hard, Chris. I didn't want to do it, which is why I got on Riverside with you and you taught me how to do it. So really, if anyone likes the video stuff, thank Chris because it's all him. But
and please don't come to me for it. I helped David and that's it. No one else gets
incredible rates. You can't ask for better. But no, it's I was resistant to it because I was audio first and like audio only. I wasn't even audio first. And then with the video stuff, though, I do get it. Like it's what's the fundamental like? OK, so do you know who Mina Kimes is?
Yeah,
I love Mina Kimes. Mina Kimes is like
one of the best ESPN anchors. Now,
well, and like she's an amazing journalist. Like she's a huge writing influence on me. The thing about Mina is that like she has a chat with Ben Solak today on her podcast that went up. Ben Solak's a NFL writer for ESPN also. And when you click on the YouTube link, it's just her on a screen and him on a screen talking. What's the difference between that and First Take?
Right.
There's no difference between the podcast shows and their actual studio shows for the most part. It's typically a split screen of two people talking about the same thing. That's it. So part of it was realizing that as much as I was against it, there's really no difference between like video is not a lesser format. I never thought it was a lesser format. I was just a purist. And so I was resistant, but I got over it partially by necessity but partially also reframing my brain and and understanding the benefits that come with it and the fact that some people would like it more.
Yeah. I think that was my exact hurdle was that like I prefer audio only podcasts, but I am not the only one listening to a podcast, right?
Or watching.
Right. Like I guess we should say like, I'm not the only one consuming a podcast. So like some people have different preferences. Some people listen to it at 2.0 speed. Some people
and they should go to jail.
And that is psychotic. Don't do that. Also, don't listen to it in like 0.5 because that's even weirder.
That's worse. That's
extra
worse.
Slow. You're like,
I understand wanting to go fast, but I don't understand wanting to go slow. That like turns into weird ASMR stuff. No, not into it.
No, we're not gonna do that. But yeah, like some people prefer to, watch their podcasts. I guess that's fine. But again, I'm like you. I'm sort of a purist in the sense that like I think there is a certain amount of beauty with just like listening to two people talk. It almost feels like you're in the room with them. And like, I think I've mentioned this, but like along with Off Panel, a show that sort of the podcast that got me into podcast was The Weekly Planet. And for a long time, I had no idea what Mr. Sunday and Mason looked like. And now I do because I do a lot more video stuff. But like where there was sort of a certain amount of attractive mystery to like that show and who those two people were and how successful, how like their bond was so tight and how they had this great rat-a-tat on the show and all those things. And they still have that, of course, but now it's the mystery is sort of gone. I don't know. It's kind of,
they should have worn masks when they went on to video.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm also like a big Daft Punk fan. So that's probably the reason why I love sort of the mystery of it all is that like, I know what Daft Punk looks like because I've looked it up, but the focus isn't their faces. It's the music, right?
We're also talking about a medium that is mostly known for people that wear costumes that obscure their own identities. So like, is there a better fit than comics and podcasting? Two things that fundamentally are about obscuring identities. I don't know. It's pretty popular. So it seems like there's quite the overlap.
Right. Well, hey, transitions, we have them over here because I think we should probably talk about our upcoming panel at New York Comic Con in October. Yeah. So for everyone that hasn't heard over on social media, David, myself, we got the short box with Botter Milligan, and of course, Brad and Lisa from Comic Book Couples Counseling will be joining. We'll all be together.
Matthew Rosenberg.
Matthew was going to be like, they suggested that we have Matthew Rosenberg on the panel, and we all voted him off like That's Survivor. Right. Like, we're like, sorry.
He's a podcasting tourist.
Yeah. No, we can't have that. Not to mention, though, I will say, it's funny you say that, Dave, is that you actually voted his podcast to be your favorite podcast on your Eisner.
I think the most delightfully absurd podcast. Well, and the funny thing is I actually have genuine questions as to whether or not he's actually done with it because he hasn't done it in a little while. And I'd be very curious if he's finally ended the run because Ethan and Griffin have been too focused on becoming successful comic creators. They're busy.
Yeah. Whatever they're doing,
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, aside. So we got the panel.
Yeah, we have the panel in October. That will be on October 10th at 12:45 p.m. over in room 1C03. And this is going to be basically just a live recording. I said live twice there, but a crossover event of all of our 4 shows together. So something I found really interesting, though, is that you mentioned in your newsletter over on Sketch that you haven't done a ton of panels in the past. I'm just curious, is this sort of a purposeful thing when you go to cons? Do you like prefer to use your time at a con to visit friends and publishers and creators and such? Or like, have you wanted to do panels in the past and just haven't found the opportunity?
I mean, my podcast is called off panel, not on panel, Chris. Jeez, it's in the name.
Did you have that in your back pocket? Did you have that ready
No,
to go?
I just thought of it.
No. I just came up with that, I promise.
I have a really quick pitch for you, though. I do want to say really quick. I haven't told anybody else about this. I've always wanted to do a panel, if I did a panel, where we introduce people and they run in the room and high five people as they go up the thing. And like, can we do that? Can we get Botter to introduce us and then we run up and high five the people that are in the audience? I'm just saying.
We're going to have like a Titantron and intro music and smoke and all the things.
I love it.
That's happening. Yeah.
Okay. So that ties into the real answer to your question, which is that I think panels are boring. I've always thought panels are boring. The only panel, there's very few panels I've been to where I've been like, I love this. One was I went to Emerald City Comic Con and I went to the John Bernthal panel, and he literally laid on a couch with a microphone and just vibed for like an hour just talking about stuff. And it was awesome. It was just like a dude being a dude, and it was great. And I love that. Like, it was just a great energy. He would have questions and answer. He would do some Q&A, but it was mostly just like going with the flow. And like, that's going back to my podcast. It's like my whole thing is going with the flow. And panels are like typically opposite of go with the flow. They're just like, you talk, then you talk, and you talk. And I remember like all of the panels that stand out to me are the ones that are like the most purely chaotic. And I love the purely chaotic ones. Like I always said that if I was ever going to do my own panel at a con, one where I actually planned it, it would be have you ever watched the Graham Norton show?
Clips and such. I haven't seen a full episode.
It would be the Graham Norton show where I bring on the guests in sequence, but it's just chaos. It's not like I'm interviewing one person. I'm interviewing all the people, and then they interview each other, and it's just nuts. And like I would bring them onto stage one by one, and it would not be that way. I would just Graham Norton show it. And I don't think I'd be able to serve alcohol like he does, but that would be my goal. And I just want it to be like flow. And so I guess that's my thing is like, I wish that panels were more like what I hope them to be rather than what they actually are. They just don't appeal to me. And so I've been asked to do a ton of them. The only one I said yes to in terms of hosting was 20th anniversary of Scott Pilgrim panel with Brian Lee O'Malley, because it was a one-on-one interview. It was a really big thing to do. I love Scott Pilgrim, and it was at San Diego Comic-Con. It's the only time I've ever been to San Diego Comic-Con. So that was the first panel I ever did, and it was a room of 750 people, and I was just like, this is fun.
Yeah.
In terms of being a guest on ones, I've only been on one as a guest. This will be my second one. And besides this one I did in Alaska, and I don't count it. The one up in Alaska, though, or the one in New York we're gonna be doing will be like only the second time I've ever been on one as a guest. The other one was like a comics journalism one at New York Comic Con with Chris Arendt and Tiffany Babb and Heidi McDonald and Austin English from the Comics Journal, and it was fine. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, it did have a lot of the hallmarks of the ones that I didn't really enjoy. Botter was there. I called on Botter in the middle of it. Not in a Q&A set. I actually just gave him a shout out in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But I just I want more vibes, and I want less like your turn, my turn, if that makes sense.
Sure. I guess. Well, let me ask you this then. All that being said, what was appealing about? Because I know we sort of pitched this idea to you to join. Comic book couples counseling, Short Box, and the Oblivion Bar. What was appealing at all about sort of joining all of us knuckleheads in New York here in a couple of months?
I like you guys.
Simple enough.
Yeah,
I like.
I mean, that's a big part of it, but also it's like, I mean, what is the big takeaway of Sketch 3.0? Which is what I've dubbed my post layoff life. Try new things. Learn new things. I was just talking to a retailer about for an article I'm doing for another publication, and like learning new things. You should never be a finished version of yourself. And like, if I can't find a way to make panels work for me, that probably says as much about me as it does about panels, because so many people enjoy them. And so try to find try it out. See if I can find a way that I enjoy it. And like, what better way to do it than with you four fine folk?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's exciting. We've already done a panel. It'd be the Short Box Comic Book Couples Counseling and
I listened to it.
Yeah, last year at New York, and it was a ton of fun. And I have a feeling we're going to have just as much fun. And to sort of speak on what you're saying there too, because we are pretty chaotic with our with our panels.
I'm very chaotic. I have to forewarn you. I'm
we're
like
just
a
shouting
chaos urchin.
profanities. It's wild stuff. It's gonna be a ton of fun. But I will say, to just sort of build off what you were saying a moment ago with, like, I guess sort of the idea of panels. I've often viewed panels in the same way that I view like Funko Pops, whereas they're cool in theory. Like I see one, I'm like, oh, that I would love to have one of those. Like, that'd be cool. And then I have it like in my hands, and I'm like, oh, actually, this is kind of boring. I don't really want this anymore. Like, I don't want this Batman Who Laughs Funko anymore. I thought it was cool when it was in the catalog, but now I don't want it anymore. The only panel that I've gone to and I've really, really like, that I haven't been a part of course, but like one that I've gone to purposely and enjoyed was actually just a couple of weeks ago at San Diego. Our friend Jim Viscardi over at Image was hosting a panel with Brian K. Vaughan, who I know you know, and I'm sure the listeners probably already know, my all-time favorite writer in comics. And I'm actually wearing my Goose shirt right now, so clearly I'm a big fan. But Brian, I could listen to him read the back of a shampoo bottle. Like, he is just endlessly funny and hilarious, and he shows his underbelly all the time. And he's like, he knows how to like properly tease and like self-deprecate and not give up too much. Like, he's like the perfect panelist. And I aspire for us to have a very similar fun sort of environment with our panel here in a couple of weeks.
I think one thing too, though, with like the Jim's one with Brian, which I think he's going to do another one in New York. Mm-hmm. I think the thing about those two, though, is they have an advantage of one-on-one is always going to be easier. Sure. I actually don't like having multiple guests on my podcast for the same reason, because there's always going to be an inequity, and there's always going to be like a little bit of like stunted flow to any conversation that involves that many people that's designed to be like that sort of thing. And so I think that works really well. We're going to crush it, though. Everyone should come, and we're going to be amazing. Either that, or you're going to just see me be like embarrassing on a panel. So you win either way.
I think we're all going to be equal parts fun and maybe embarrassing a little bit too. Who knows? We'll see. But okay, so I want to sort of round out our conversation here, David, with a fun sort of game, I guess, something that I knew that you specifically would enjoy and I think we would have fun with. I'm sure most listeners know this, especially on your end, but you love sports. I definitely love sports. You love comics. I love comics. We both are podcasters, all the things, like we sort of have all that very much in common. So I wanted to manufacture a game that involves pretty much all of that. And admittedly, I will say that like I was inspired by one of your recent, I guess you reposted a blog from, was it your sketchbook this past year from the 2024?
Oh, the Age of Atentacumpo. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you had this really awesome chapter where basically you compared, was it comic creators to, or no, sorry.
Well, the Age of Atentacumpo was a hypothetical situation where mutants became real and all wanted to join the NBA.
Yes.
I've also done other comps like that where like, you know, comparing this person to that. But yeah. Oh, and I did the comparison of players to the who an NBA player comp for that mutant would be.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. And again, this is going to be less of a comparison and more of just like a sort of, I guess, like
vibe twin.
Fun. Yeah, exactly. We're going to catch some vibes really quick. We're going to just see, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to name off one of our peers, one of our favorite comic book podcasts that we all have already talked about probably in the show. And I want you to just sort of name the first NBA team or player that you think of that sort of relates to that show. And you can rationalize this however you want, or you don't even have to. Like, you could just say what comes to mind and we can just move on. But I want to at least give you that space to explain if you want to. And on the flip side, I'm going to do the same thing, but for NFL teams, because while I feel like I like basketball, and I think you also know just as much about football, but I know football a lot more than basketball. So that's how I'm going to kind of bring it into this conversation too. So
this is my dark secret. I know way more about sports than I do about comics.
Here's the thing. For a long time, I had a sports tattoo. I had a sports tattoo way before I had a comics tattoo. So that should tell you everything you know about me. And I guess I should admit this live on the show. I have a Ravens shield on my back left shoulder. I'm a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan and have been since I was in middle school. So
they're a cool team.
Yeah, they are cool now. They weren't when I was a kid. Kyle Bowler was our quarterback. So that should tell you everything you should know about that team. But I will say, I was going to see if there's any other prerequisites. I don't. Oh, I'll see. If you don't know the show, you can just skip it. Just say skip. We'll move on. So, David, if you're ready, let's get into it. All right. So the first show is, we already talked about him, Botter Milligan over at the Short Box Podcast, a comic book talk show.
I mean, the obvious, I do want to point out the NFL pick is extremely obvious, and I hope you go the correct direction. But I'm going to go with he's probably going to hate that I pick him, but Jimmy Butler, he's a NBA, he's a player that is currently on the Golden State Warriors, formerly of Botter's Miami Heat, just because like he's very good at what he does. And like he is simultaneously like seems really serious, but also is very jokey about it. Yeah. And like, I don't know if you know this, but Jimmy Butler during the bubble in 2020, when they were playing the playoffs in like Disney World in Orlando, Jimmy Butler opened a coffee shop called Big Head Coffee and sold like incredibly expensive high end coffee to his varying other NBA peers and everything. That seems like a very Botter thing to do. Like because like Botter's the type of person who's not just doing podcasts, but he's doing like podcast movement and stuff like that. Yeah. He's like always finding like really fun angles that are unexpected. The only thing I will say is that Jimmy Butler is probably not a good comp because I don't think that Botter would ever go as dark side as Jimmy has at times.
He wouldn't straighten his hair.
I think if Botter ever did go dark side, I think he'd find a good way to market that dark side, which Jimmy never fails at. So partially for Miami, partially for personality, partially for the Miami Heat connection. So there you go.
I think that's a good comp. Yeah. And I think that Jimmy Butler is also someone that has been like criminally overlooked for a lot of his career too. Like everyone knows that he's good, but no one gives him the credit for how good he is and how long he's been doing it. Same as Botter. Botter's been doing the short box since 2012. Like the dude has been doing it forever.
I mean, Botter's one of the best interviews I've like going on his show was an absolute delight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he's one of my best friends in comic book podcasting. So I totally agree with that. Now let's see if I'm correct in my NFL comparison. I gave him the Los Angeles Chargers.
Oh,
was that what you're thinking?
No, you can't pick anybody besides, you can't pick anybody besides Jacksonville Jaguars.
The other thing is that Jacksonville's a terribly run organization that like looks cool, but like internally it's just like broken.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, great vibes, great colors. Had a very prominent feature in The Good Place. I mean, there's a lot of pluses, and plus, like everyone, like here's the thing: Jacksonville, did they win the championship? No. But they all like people know who the Jaguars are. They always remember, like, is it always for the right reasons? Maybe not, but it's still a good time. And also the Duval, anyways, yes, Rams go.
They have it's the Chargers here. It's the other
Chargers,
LA team,
but
yeah, I know it was similar, I think, because I will say in my head, and you can tell me if you think differently, when I think of the NFL and like the coolest team, I always think of those powdered blues. Like the LA Chargers,
they are
specifically, nice. When we were younger, it was the San Diego Chargers. But like, when I think of the Chargers, the first thing that comes in my mind is like that powdered blue and big powdered blue letters, cool. And I think that every time I'm around Botter, he is just like the coolest guy in the room. He knows a ton about hip hop. He knows a ton about comics. And I'm sure people know this by listening to this. He knows a ton about podcasting. And I think that's one of his coolest features. So shout out to Botter. Let's move on.
Can I tell you a really quick thing?
Yeah, please.
The first time I ever met Botter, I was at New York Comic Con and my wife and I were going up the escalator and I heard somebody behind me talking about like off panel and sketched. And I was like, what's going on? I turned back and it's Botter fake on the phone talking. And he was just using that as a gateway to talk. And then we ended up chatting for a while. But it was just funny because it was just like a very cool and easy way to like bring it in. Also, apparently he knew that saying things about my stuff would immediately draw my attention. And he was right.
Yeah, cool as the other side of the pillow. That's Botter Milligan. If I could ever describe him one way, that'd be it. All right. Speaking of cool, though, we have our favorite couple in comic book podcasting. It's the Comic Book Couples Counseling. Of course, Brad and Lisa Gullickson are good friends. I guess I can give my NFL team first this time, and I compared them to the Detroit Lions. And the reason why that is because I think that they are on an incredible surge currently. In terms of in our space, I don't think there are any higher risers in the comic book podcasting space than Brad and Lisa and their show. Rightfully so. Like they're hosting the Harveys, they're interviewing Grant Morrison. They are just doing they just went on a road trip and visited like, I think it was 12 or 13 possibly comic book shops on their way to San Diego Comic-Con. Like they are just constantly doing the coolest thing in our space. And there's no stopping them because like you and like me, Brad, always seeking out that opportunity. And Lisa, and I've told her this before, and I stand by this. Lisa is the funniest podcaster in our space. She is the greatest color commentator in comic book podcasting, undoubtedly.
When I was on their show, and it'll be coming out, I think in September, and I think to some degree, Brad did not know what to do with Lisa and I because we were just like so naturally glomming on to all the silliest possible angles, and he was just like, "I'm trying to do a serious thing right now. What are you guys doing?"
Brad had to be the straight man.
that is a great comp. I'm kind of debating between two California teams. I think I'm going to go with the Lakers just because the Los Angeles Lakers, some people might scoff at that, but like they're just so good at like being in the public. And it's like you can't have the conversation about the NBA without talking about the Lakers. And like you can't have a conversation about the world of comic podcasts right now without talking about Brad and Lisa and comic book couples counseling. Also, the fact that they're led by two very notable people in Brad and Lisa and in LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Yeah. So I think that there's some comps there. And, you know, the other one I was going to go with was Golden State, but I was having a harder time with that. So I'm going to go with the Lakers there.
Sure.
I was going to go with Jeff Teague as a player comp, but as a retired player, but I was just like, man, no one's going to know who I'm talking about. And he's also a podcaster, so it's too obvious.
You can get really inside baseball if you want here. It's totally fine. I'll try to follow you along with this one, even if our listeners maybe can or won't.
We'll go deeper cuts going forward.
There you go. All right. I like it. I will say that also to speak on your LA Lakers comp there, I agree with you. And also like incredible branding, right?
Yeah,
like they have branding. Jesse Lonergan doing their logo, but also like just the idea of a couple talking about comics in, I'm not going to say a serious way, but like in a very intelligent, inviting way is such a, like that is the best pitch for a podcast in our space. Like it doesn't get better than that.
And here's another thing is like the Lakers are also led by two players that I'm not, this is not me saying the same is true for Brad and Lisa, but we know so much about LeBron and we know so much about Luka. I mean, Luka just had that Men's Health magazine article that was about how he's shredded now. And so like they're always in the public face, not just them as basketball players, but them as people. And like the thing is that's something that they're very good at is they foreground themselves. Like every episode starts with them talking rather than, you know, mine, you're like 30 seconds in before you hear the guest. And so it's just a dramatically different approach where it's host first in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to, maybe the godfather of comic book podcasting. We have Word Balloon with John Suntress. Who is your NBA comp to John Suntress?
Oh my God. That is, you go with NFL first. I need a second for this one.
I'm going to say, and this one was, I think, maybe the toughest of all of these comparisons. I said the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
And the reason why I said Minnesota is because I think Minnesota, for most of my life, they've never really had like an extremely terrible year from what I can remember. Maybe they have, but like at least in my brain, in my own sort of inner canon, Minnesota has always been at least, I would say like pretty good to very good. Even last year, they were one of the best teams in terms of record. So, and I also think that Minnesota is one of the most storied franchises. They're one of the original AFL teams. So like he is one of those pillars within our, in our space. And I think that John, whether you've listened to one of his 4-hour-long conversations with Brian Michael Bendis or not, I will say that like he is undoubtedly a large chapter in the saga of comic book podcasting, as is Minnesota. Even though Minnesota has never won a national or an NFL championship, they are still, I believe, one of the most storied franchises in the league.
Yeah. My NBA pick is Minnesota Timberwolves point guard Mike Conley Jr.
There you go.
And the reason
from
why
Indiana.
And from Indiana, yeah, that's right. Mike's been doing this for so long. Like he was a rookie the same year Kevin Durant was a rookie. He's like 38 or something like that. And the thing that's amazing about him is that he's always been solid. Everyone likes him. Everyone likes him. Like, here's a fun fact for you. He only has one technical foul in his entire career. He only earned it like 2 years ago or something. And it was like this weird fact about Mike Conley. And it's just because he's like the person you bring in when you just want good things to happen. And he's the adult in the room. And John is like reliable. He is the person that you need when you want something good to happen. And it's who creators go to when they're just like, I'm going to have a good conversation with somebody to talk about something that's really important to me. And I can trust that. That's very Mike Conley of John Suntress.
Yeah, John is very much like, I think, just sort of the safety guard, especially for like the older generation of comic book creators. Like there are certain creators that you just won't see on any other show besides Word Balloon. And I think that's special. I think that's worth protecting and I think worth celebrating as well. So Next one up, we have Comic Pop, Sal and Co. over on YouTube, but also they have Off the Rack and other podcasts and such. I guess I should give did I give my NFL team first last time, or did you?
You did. I'm going to go with mine. And it's funny. Okay. So I told you before we started recording that I'm not ultra familiar with Comic Pop. I'm aware in the sense that most of the time when I see Comic Pop come up, it's their like horde of fans just being like, they're the best. They're the best. It reminds me of like I mentioned earlier, Zach Lowe. He is people ask me who's like my big influence and stuff like that for podcasting and for writing. Both answers are Zach Lowe. I love Zach Lowe. And he has this term for Toronto Raptors fans. He calls them spooky molders because they are always like looking for like the weird conspiracy against their team. And that's not the case for Comic Pop, I don't think. I don't think Sal's like, oh my God, like I have a conspiracy against my podcast or against, I don't know, Youngblood or something like that. But like their fans seem like ultra passionate to the point where they will come out of the woodwork for anything. So I'm going to say that Comic Pop is the Toronto Raptors.
I like that. That's a great comp. Yeah, Toronto fans are pretty rabid. Like they
they won a title. They've reached the mountaintop. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's a totally reasonable fit.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go with I would say a very similar comp to John over at Word Balloon with Comic Pop, because they are I think a staple in the sort of comic discourse space, right? My comp for Comic Pop was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
They are, I think, one of the most storied institutions, both, again, with Pittsburgh and in the NFL. I think, again, think of the Steel Curtain and just they've, again, very similar to Minnesota in my headcanon. They are just always good. Even when they're not good, even when they're like 7-5 or whatever however many games the NFL plays nowadays, they are, even if they're like 700, they are still solids. They're like one of the best somewhere, whether it be like defense or whatever. So
they always use black magic to somehow be 10-7, even though they have a point differential of -1,000.
Right. And then the same as like Comic Pop, they will find a way to make like, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like, they'll make a conversation about Rob Liefeld's recent Deadpool series super interesting and engaging. Like they'll find a way to do that. So I have so much respect for Sal and Tiffany and the whole crew over there at Comic Pop. And as I've told you, David, many times, like part of my growth and part of the reason why I was so inspired to like do what I'm doing with Oblivion Bar with Aaron and I comes from my love of Comic Pop. Like, yeah, they're definitely part of that.
I do want to say you're very specifically talking about them as a franchise, not necessarily in the current Aaron Rodgers fueled era.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not at any point comparing Aaron Rodgers and Sal to each other, because that would be blasphemous. And Sal, please don't take those words.
It could be interpreted as such. So I wanted to bring it up.
I appreciate the clarity. Thank you very much, David. Thank you. Let's move on to, again, this is another, I think, very, very much of a staple within, I would say, comic podcasting, and that's iFanboy. For my NFL team, I picked the Denver Broncos. I feel like I had a very similar sort of approach with these at least these last three: Word Balloon, Comic Pop, and iFanboy. And that is that like they have been so consistent through their run. And I think that we can say this a lot about a lot of these folks, but like specifically these three, is that like they have been doing this for so long and their fan base is so dedicated that they wouldn't have the listenership they have today if they weren't putting out an incredible product. And I think, again, very similar to the Denver Broncos, a pretty good ran organization. I mean, at times, right? They figure out ways to win, I guess is the best way to put it. But like, I think at the end of the day, Denver Broncos, a storied franchise within NFL history. And I thought that was the best comp. I almost said Baltimore Ravens with this one with iFanboy, but I don't know.
Cross over with your own interest too much.
Yeah, this is a spoiler for my list. I didn't give Baltimore to anybody. Yeah, I didn't want to do that because that would assume favoritism, and I didn't want to do that.
I'm not giving anybody Indiana Pacers or like Reggie Miller or whatever. I'm going to go with New York Knicks for them. Okay. New York Knicks, been there forever. Their people stick with them forever. They have the name. Like I kind of feel like they've been around for so long that they've just like, it's like when you talk about the Knicks and you talk about like Madison Square Garden. You know what they call Madison Square Garden? The Mecca of basketball.
Oh, sure.
It's like it is the holy spot. I went to a game in 2023 at Madison Square Garden preseason before New York Comic Con, and it's a hell of an experience. Even when you're there watching the Boston Celtics play their like seventh string center and whatnot during like the preseason. And so like I think that's the thing about iFanboy is it's just like they're one of the first names you think of when you think of comics podcasting. And it doesn't matter who's on the show, and it doesn't matter what they're talking about or how they're doing or whatever. It's not a qualitative statement, just like it is with the Knicks. Knicks suck. I'm just kidding.
This is a no Knicks fans podcast, everybody, just so we're all aware.
I mean, you're from Indiana, and
right.
I'm an Indiana Pacers fan. There's going to be animosity there.
That's right.
But I actually like the Steelers less, though. That's the funny thing. But
same.
Yeah, the Knicks, though, I mean, like, they're just charmingly forever. They're just always there. And that's iFanboy, a staple of the podcasting community.
I think that's the last two, you've done a much better job of sort of comparing your team to my team. I'm unsurprised, but I will say that, like, I think the Knicks is a great comparison there for sure. Okay, these next two should be pretty interesting. And we're going to go to a show that I'm a big fan of, and I think you may be as well. And that is a little show called Off Panel. What is your NBA comparison to Off Panel?
Michael Jordan meets Reggie Miller meets Steve Nash meets
the blocking ability of Ben Wallace.
The entire lifespan of the Boston Celtics.
There you go.
I'll let you go first after I give my sarcastic answer.
Sure. Mine is the Green Bay Packers. I will say that, again, as I've mentioned before, and I'll stop doing this probably maybe after this or maybe one more time, but to butter you up a little bit, there's no Oblivion Bar without Off Panel. I just, again, listening to your show, I wouldn't say growing up, I was in my 20s, but like, I guess growing up in like the comic discourse space, right? Like first becoming a Wednesday Warrior, I became very interested in the creators behind the comics that I love. And I think I can think of a very specific point in my life where I stopped following characters and started following creators, right? Like we all kind of, I think at some point have that graduation where we stop reading Batman just because it's a Batman comic and we start reading Tom King's books because we followed him from Batman, I guess. Like that's a comparison. But like part of that curiosity came with discovering Off Panel and discovering these conversations that you're having with creators. And I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And it inspired me to want to do the same thing. And to sort of compare that to Green Bay, which I think is maybe it's close between like Dallas and Pittsburgh as like the most storied program. Or
I think it's Green Bay. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Lambeau, like there's everything about Green Bay says football. And I think that like in a very similar way as like Off Panel, I think is a great poster child for comic book discourse, right? Green Bay has just, I think maybe this is something I didn't have initially, but Green Bay is owned by
I was just going to bring
their shareholders,
owned
right?
by the people.
Right. So, and Off Panel, I think ever since everything that happened from you over the summer, there's definitely a comparison there for sure. So yeah, I'm very confident in the Green Bay Packers comparison there.
If anyone that listens to this that I've ever talked basketball with is going to just be like, I hate you, David. I can't believe you're making this comparison. I'm making this comparison in a very specific way, not necessarily in the quality. It is partially, I think, maybe related to that, but Nikola Jokic, the center for the Denver Nuggets. And the reason why is an unconventional approach to effective results. Mm-hmm. Like Jokic, I perhaps don't have the ideal body for a comic book podcaster, but I still get the results. I still like playing with others. Like my game is fundamentally a team game. And like, that's the thing that makes Jokic special is not the fact that he's totally emphasizing I'm going to score 40 points, although he can do that all the time, just like I can get buckets.
Straight cash, homie.
It's all about passing. It's all about like setting up your teammates for success. And like, I think that that's what makes Jokic really special. And like, I like to think that that's what I do like really well on my show. And the last point I want to make is that, and this is, I'm not trying to say that anybody else isn't like this. I think this partially ties into why I'm kind of bad at promoting what I do sometimes is like, if Jokic wins the championship or if Jokic loses the championship, that doesn't ruin his life. It doesn't ruin everything for him.
He may not even care.
I mean, when he won the championship and he found out that they had to do a parade and he had to stay there longer, he was upset, like on national television, because he just wanted to get back to his goddamn horses. And that's totally fine. And like, I think that like the thing is like, I have a very Ted Lasso approach to how I do things. Like there's the line, have you watched Ted Lasso?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. The fourth episode is my favorite episode from the first season of any of that. And it's Trent Krim from The Independent. And he tells Trent Krim that he doesn't care about wins and losses. I don't care about wins and losses. All I care about is achieving the result that I'm looking for in the process of doing it. I don't really care if it turns out great as long as I feel like I gave it my best. And like, I think that's the same for Jokic. Like if Jokic does his thing and then has to go back to his horse as a winner, and if he has to go back as a loser, he's fine with that. I think that that's not a bad thing. Anyways, so I'm Jokic, multiple-time MVP, baby.
I think the Jokic's comparison is great because much like, again, his horses, he'll just go home to his horses no matter what.
I got cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you're being interviewed by David Harper, just know that regardless of how well that conversation goes, could go terribly, could go great, he is going to leave that room and go play with his cats. You know?
That's right. I'm actually going to go upstairs and take them outside after this.
All right. Last one here. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but now I'm just curious because I have an ego. The Oblivion Bar, a comic book podcast. What is your NBA comparison to?
You got to do NFL first. I'm sorry. You got to do it.
Okay.
You've thought about it already.
I see. Here's the thing is I couldn't really find much, very similar to how you sort of struggled and sort of spun your wheels to try to figure out the correct comparison. For me, I chose the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the team that I think best compares to the Oblivion Bar. And I think the main reason, I don't really have like a great in-depth reason for that outside the fact that I think the Buccaneers have a great logo and so does the Oblivion Bar. And also we have a ship in our stadium, whatever. It's kind of cool, right?
That's right.
I will say that like Tampa Bay is often doing things in their own way. When Tampa Bay has won the championship, they're often doing things because they are approaching things from wherever the through line is, they're often going the opposite way and aren't afraid to sort of be like the bad boys of the league that year. I think very specifically of like the John Gruden Super Bowl year from the 2000s, where like they had Brad Johnson as their quarterback, who was like 34, and they had, Spikes. Was it Tequila Spikes? I'm trying to think of
Derek Brooks. Spikes, yeah.
Derek Brooks. It was Derek Brooks who was.
Yeah, Tequila Spikes was in the Bengals, right?
Yeah. So like they had all these like misfits on their team, and they found a way to put it together and have maybe one of the greatest defenses of all time. When Tampa first came into the NFL, they were looked at as like a joke. I don't think we were considered a joke, but like no one expected much. And I think we've sort of grown to a point where like we're very satisfied with our history and the things that we do on the show in a similar way as like Tampa doesn't really have anything to prove outside of just being an already successful franchise.
And you're the Baker Mayfield of comic book podcasting.
I will take that. I'll take that all day.
You know what? Former #1 pick turns himself into a real player.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw somebody make a compelling case that he's supposed to be like a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. We'll see about that. But
here's the thing: is that like Baker is and I think we could maybe say a similar thing about me. You'd be the one to ask, I guess, in this conversation. But Baker is the player that you hate playing against, but you love having on your team.
I think he is now. I once had an episode called Baker Mayfield of Off Panel where we came up with our comps for who he was in terms of, I think we did quarterback comps for either comic creators or comic characters. And I don't remember where I landed on that, but it was not, it was Brown's Baker Mayfield. It wasn't like the more recent vintage.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna go with my pick for you is not going to be somebody that people necessarily recognize unless they watch this year's NBA Finals. Jalen Williams, J-Dub, the number 2 guy on Oklahoma City. J-Dub is one of the most thoughtful. He's like incredibly naturally gifted. Like he is a freak of nature. He is incredibly like good at everything he does. But I think the thing that differentiates him is the fact that he's very thoughtful about his approach in like a way that you don't often get with a lot of NBA players. And that's something that's always really impressed me about you is the fact that like, I think you're good at this, but I also think that your approach is so thoughtful that it puts you in a position to succeed even when you don't got it that day. Just like J-Dub, who had torn a tendon in his wrist and had to reteach himself how to shoot the basketball during the playoffs, during which they won the NBA Finals, and he scored 40 points in it. So yes, also great dude, great for vibes. I think my pick's Jalen Williams.
I love that. Yeah. The most dangerous layup in the league, I think.
Oh my God.
The most crazy. Unblockable layup of all time.
And he comes from such like wild angles.
Right. Yeah. So I love that. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And also I love the comparison because there was not a more frustrating player to watch in the NBA Finals than Williams. Like
he's why the Pacers lost.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I mean, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is MVP for a reason. J-Dub is the reason why the Pacers lost. He was the straw that stirred their drink.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, David, I have kept you far longer than I originally asked. I said about an hour, and we're at 90 minutes. So thank you so much for joining. And I appreciate you also taking place in that weird comparison game that I sort of just came up on the fly.
Weird, it was fun.
And it was totally, it was a ton of fun. So I'm going to hand it off to you one last time before I let you go here. And I will just say again, as I said many times, I'll just sort of briefly overview it one last time. Absolutely love what you're doing with Off Panel and Sketch. I'm so happy that you were able to just, as soon as this terrible news happened during the summer, both with your heart and also with your job, that you didn't let it sort of just like get you down immediately, and you immediately reflexed into what I think you even said this, a more appetizing route, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just it's really inspiring, and like you often are. Like I think that's just the best way to say is that, like, David, you are a total inspiration to myself and a lot of our friends that we just mentioned a moment ago. And it's just such a pleasure not only to have you here today on the Oblivion Bar, but also to just be a friend, to have you at my disposal to bounce ideas off of, and to have you here with this panel. And I'm glad we can like share help with each other with our shows, because there is a bit of a fraternity when it comes to comic podcasting. And I think, again, this is the last compliment you're getting from me, David. I think you're leading the pack. I think you are the one that we all sort of look up at and go, wow, if David's doing it like this, I think we can maybe do it in a slightly worse way. So
whatever.
David, I'm going to hand it off to you one last time.
I do want to say really quick, I brought this up to you before, and I don't even know if you really remember this moment, but at New York Comic Con, I want to say 2023, I went up and talked to you, and you were with Christian Ward, and I mentioned the fact that I saw you guys were doing that panel, and I was like, you guys didn't invite me. And you're like, you said something about the fact that we were on like a different level or something like that. And I think that that's doing all of yourselves a disservice. You guys are not... We're all on our own level, and like we all could learn from one another. And I think that is why we get better at this, is we're always learning and we're always getting better at what we do. And you know what? I bet Nikola Jokic and Jalen Williams would make some sweet basketball music together. But
2-on-5 every game, they're winning. They're going 72-0.
I wouldn't. I mean, them versus the Wizards. I don't know, man. Okay. So now I'm supposed to talk about my stuff, right? So yeah. I mean, if you have liked what I had to say and you're interested in what I do is basically a lot of deep dives into super random subjects. Spoiler alerts for this is an exclusive. I've not announced that I'm doing this, but one of my pieces I have coming up is the most me thing you possibly could hear. I'm doing a piece about the 60th anniversary of Stiltman, which is this year,
awesome.
Where I talk to a whole bunch of creators about like why that character stands out and why those weirdo oddball characters are ones we love. I have a big piece about the League of Comic Geeks coming up, and about how it's like quietly one of like the biggest powerhouses in comics without us realizing it. I got Brian K. Vaughan coming up. I have Oliver Sava with whatever. I have Oliver Sava with the Superhero State of the Union. I got Nick Dragata and David Brothers coming up on the podcast. If you'd like to subscribe to Sketched and read my work and support the work that I do, it costs just like a comic a month, basically. And sometimes it's like $2.99 on the annual plan, so it's really not too much. And you get a 7-day free trial if you just want to check it out. But yeah, all of my day job is now working on Sketch and Off Panel, so your support means a lot. And then Off Panel has Patreon that you can back it at patreon.com/Off Panel. It's on all the podcasting platforms, and you can listen to, or watch it on YouTube as well. And yeah, I don't know. I got a Ko-fi if you want to buy me a coffee, whatever. I have some other stuff coming up, which I can't really talk about, but I will be writing for some other publications that are of interest. And I mean, you can subscribe to my local comic shop, Bosco's email newsletter, to learn about the comics that I recommend each week. And stay tuned for next year when I'm going to do Sketchbook 2025, probably slightly modified, because I'm going to have to change the pricing element of it. Oh, and if you're going to be at New York Comic Con and want to say, hey, come and say, hey, I'll be walking around, and I love saying hi to people.
Yeah. And you'll have a panel. Come to the panel as well.
Yeah, come to the panel. Yeah, we're going to do awesome stuff.
I have a 3-part finale sort of response to that. So firstly, I need Sketchbooks 2022 and I think 20. Did you do 2020 as well?
I've done 2019 to 2024. So you're
I'm missing
2019.
3. I'm missing 3.
I mean, it's funny because like I had James Tynan be like, "Do you got any more 2021s?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like maybe." But that was very nice little name drop by me. I'm sorry. But it is funny though, because people have been buying them for years and somehow miss one, and so like it stands out because you look at it on the bookshelf and they're just like, "Where'd that one go?"
Right.
I'll look and see.
Okay, perfect. Secondly, I will say I'm also a Patreon member of Off Panel. Well worth it, everybody. If for some reason you need any more justification, highly recommend it. And then thirdly, you showed me a video recently with you and Chip about Stiltman. Is that part going to be included in this upcoming Stiltman?
It will be.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And fun fact, he's not the only one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm not going to spoil anything else besides that. I think it's a really cool sort of.
It is a culmination of my comic book life.
Right. It is the defining moment, I think, maybe, possibly.
It is a very wonderful thing. And I'm sorry that we're speaking very abstractly about it, but I don't want to spoil my own article and what I hope to be a video I share online.
Absolutely. Well, David, thank you again so much. Can't wait for our panel in a couple months. Thank you again for coming on to the show. And we'll talk to you very, very soon.
See ya.
Which is the research-driven, which is a research. I'm fucking up here. This is how I gotta bring it back in.
It's because I'm watching. It's what I'm watching.
Don't look away. I have performance issues when you look at me.